Hey friends, we're going to go ahead and make our chunky knit blanket. So we got all our supplies here, everything that we need, so let's get started. We're first going to start by making a slip knot. We're going to pull that through and tighten it, and we are going to adjust it by pulling on our working yarn, and we're going to be sure to try to make that 3 finger widths wide. That's pretty important. And then we're going to just make some additional loops. And we're going to be consistent in our size, 3 fingers wide for each of the loops. And for this blanket, we're going to do a baby blanket. So the width of it's going to be a little shorter than a normal size throw. So we're going to do approximately 18 to 20 loops. I'm going to put a description of different sizes in the bottom there of the video so you can decide for yourself what size you want to make. So we're going to count our loops, and we can just loosen up some that might be a little tight because we're going to need to get in there to start our first row of knitted loops. So we're looking good here. I think we've got about 19, and that end, those last 2 loops I like to leave a little bit smaller just because the corner of the blanket, sometimes it can get a little too floppy if those 2 are too big. So we're going to flip our chain over so that the back is facing up. And we're going to be sure to skip the first loop, and we're going to grab the center pieces of yarn. So we got our top loop, bottom loop, but in the center there, we're going to grab and make a loop. Leaving that that last loop that we just made, we're going to let that be. We're going to make our first loop of the first row, and we're going to do that all across. Let's get a little closer so you can see that center loop. Yep. And we are going to take our 2 fingers, reach under, and pull it through. Try to keep those sides of the loops as consistent as possible. I like to do about 2 fingers wide for those loops. I like my blankets a little tighter just because it is a little neater, and it also doesn't show so many holes over time with the blanket. So we're just going to go ahead and try to keep our chain as straight as possible. This is the hardest part of the blanket, making the first 2 rows. It's a little wonky. So we're going to go ahead and finish up that first row. We're going to keep it straight as we go, and so when we put the last loop in that first row, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just because those end loops end up being the side edges, the border for your blanket, and you'll see as we go. So let's go ahead and do our second row. We're going to leave that first loop hanging. Whenever you start a new row, you're going to leave that last loop hanging out until you come back the other way and pick it up. And so we're going to build from left to right. We're going to finish this second row, and you see how it gets a little bit easier as we get a little higher in our loops of yarn. The chenille yarn is very flexible, easy to manage. So it's best to keep your yarn close to the working yarn, close to your fingers. There, so if you, right there, if you have too much excess yarn in the back and you're not holding it at the base of the last loop, you can end up with some floppy pieces of yarn. And you can usually see those floppy pieces in the back. You'll see a big piece of yarn hanging. That's just because we didn't make it tight when we created the loop. So here is where we are going to pick up that first loop that we left hanging out, and we're going to put our fingers through and make a loop. This is going to be the beginning of your side edge. You'll see as you go higher and higher, it's going to build, and you'll see the sharpness of the side edge border. We've built up using our first skein of yarn and going from left to the right, right to left, left to right. And we are going to get ready to change colors. And before we change colors, let's make sure we have enough yarn for another row. We're going to make sure we have at least the width of the blanket 3 times. So you can just drag your yarn across 3 times, and just to make sure you can finish out a row before you add a new color. So let's go ahead and do one more row and then we'll switch. And by switching colors, you want to make sure you get it nice and even on your first row of the new color. So we are going to stop knitting at the second to the last loop, and then we're going to cut at the base of that second to the last loop. We're done with that color, and we're going to add the gray. I'm going to loosen that so I'll have a little more leeway to work with. There's a little plastic piece in the middle of this yarn, and you can cut away some of the scraggly piece if you need to, just to make sure you feel it and see it. It's nice to get a clear visual of the plastic piece because you don't want to burn too much yarn because you end up with a big hard knot. So we're going to take our lighter and just light that little plastic piece in the middle. And then we will put them together, let them kiss and be happy. And those little plastic pieces are going to melt together. And you can rub it just to make sure that plastic is not making a big hard lump. Snug a little, it's pretty snug, so you can tug it a little bit just to test it out. And go ahead and put that last loop of the previous color back. And now we're going to start our edge with the new color. And then we're going to just take that all the way across from the left to the right. And each loop is going to get a new loop of the new color. And as always, just keep all your loops as consistent as possible. That way everything looks smooth and nice and neat. And finish this off and add another new color and show you how to finish off your blanket by casting off or binding off is another way to finish your blanket. So I'll be right back. So we went ahead and finished adding another color. And we are going to get ready to cast off or bind off our blanket. Go ahead and finish off this last row. We have more than enough yarn to cast off, and it's at least 3 width lengths of the blanket that you need. We have more than enough. And when we cast off or finish off the blanket, we are going to make that very last row, the loops, a little bit bigger. And I will show you why. They're going to be just a little more length to those loops. Because when we close off the blanket, we're going to make another chain like we did on the bottom. So we have the last final row a little bit bigger. We are going to make our last edge loop also a little bit bigger. And what we're going to do with those bigger loops is make a chain similar to the one that we started with in the very beginning. It's going to have the same appearance, but we're just going to do it a little different. And it's pretty easy. So we're going to take that last loop on the edge, and we're going to make another loop into that loop. And we're going to grab the next loop, put them together, take our working yarn, and make another loop. So by adding that extra one from on the edge, we're going to be able to have a nice corner instead of it being rounded. So we're going to do that all the way across. And we're going to have the same chain that we had on the very bottom. So we take the one loop we create, grab the next one, put them together, put our working yarn through, and make one single loop. And we're going to do that all the way across. And it's good to have that loop that you're creating, make that also a little bigger, almost 3 finger widths wide. Because what we're doing is stretching it over. If it's too tight, it can curl. So we are getting to the end, and we are going to have one loop left. So you can see here that chain looks very similar to the bottom. We can kind of maneuver our corner to make it a little sharper. We put that extra loop there so it can curve sharp instead of a rounded curve. So we're going to cut the working yarn, and we have a tail. Let me get a little bit into the view of the camera. So we're going to take that tail, and we're going to put it through that last loop. We're going to pull the tail, and we're going to create a knot in that loop just by pulling it snug. And you'll see and you'll feel that it's turning into a nice tight knot. Now what you can do is either cut right at the base of that knot, or you can take your tail and weave it. Some people like to just weave their tail all the way through the side. Sometimes if you wash it, you might see it dangling. I like to weave it, and I also like to cut it. I'll do that on the bottom so you can see both ways. So I'm just going to cut that tail. I weaved it a little bit, but now I'm going to burn it into the side border. So that plastic piece, I'm going to take the inside of a border loop and just kind of melt it into the inside of a loop on the border edge. And that just makes it neat. You won't have to worry about loose yarn coming out while you're snuggling. Just hold that and it melts into that piece of yarn on the side and you are good to go. So if you look on the bottom, remember that initial tail from your slip knot? So the tail on the bottom, we're just going to go ahead and cut that. So that's another way you can get rid of your tails. That knot is secure. You don't have to worry about it unraveling. You can just cut it right at the base of it, or you can weave if that's what you like, your preference. And we can get rid of the little scraggly pieces. And we are done. I will go ahead and add in the description different sizes of blankets that you can make, and I hope this was helpful.